Welcome again to today's special event from Algorithm to Awareness, a noetic exploration of conscious AI. My name is Andrea Livingston, and I'm the Associate Director of Engagement and Partnerships here at IONS. And we're so grateful that you are here with us for this year's anticipated event and announcement of the 2025 recipients of the Linda G. O'Brien Noetic Research Prize. So this annual $100,000 award recognizes groundbreaking noetic research. And as a scientific nonprofit, IONS funding is almost entirely from memberships and donations. So we are incredibly grateful for your support. And if you're not currently a member, please consider joining us. Membership gives you access to hundreds of hours of video recordings on noetic topics and science of consciousness, as well as online and in-person member events. And most importantly is that as a member, you really play an integral role in supporting the transformation of consciousness around the globe. So you can learn more about membership or make a one-time donation to support our work at noetic.org/give. So now I'd love to just give a high-level overview of our next 90 minutes together. To begin, we'll open with a big picture view of IONS and the intention behind the Linda G. O'Brien Prize by IONS Director of Research, Dr. Helene Wabe. We'll be hearing from IONS Board Chair Claudia Wells, who will be sharing some opening reflections from the board, as well as IONS President, Dr. Thomas Brophy, who will expand on the purpose of this year's prize. We'll also hear from Dr. Arnaud Delorme, who will walk us through the details of this year's competition and hear a bit from Linda G. O'Brien herself in a short video of her inspiration for this prize. And then, of course, the moment we've been waiting for, we're not revealing them yet, but at that point, we will reveal the three winning teams and hear directly from them about their award-winning papers. So I know I'm really excited for that, and we're really grateful to have everyone here with us. And I think let's begin. We are now ready to head into the beginning of our program, and please join me in welcoming IONS Director of Research, Dr. Helene Wabe. Helene, off to you.
Thank you so much, Andrea, and hello, everyone. It is a joy and honor to be here with you today as we celebrate the 2025 Linda G. O'Brien Noetic Sciences Research Prize, one of IONS' visionary initiatives. For those of you who may be new to IONS, our mission is profound in its simplicity, to reveal the interconnected nature of reality through scientific exploration and personal discovery. For more than 5 decades, we have worked to advance a deeper, more complete understanding of consciousness, how it works, how it interacts with the physical world, and how expanding our understanding of consciousness can positively transform our lives and world. We're living in a time when long-held scientific assumptions are being re-examined, and new opportunities are opening for rigorous, open-minded inquiry. And IONS has existed to meet that moment by helping to build a consciousness-inclusive science, one that is not limited by models that reflect a narrower view of consciousness, but is responsive to the full spectrum of human experience. And this is exactly why Linda G. O'Brien created this prize. She recognized that consciousness research asks some of the most important questions human beings can ask. What is the nature of awareness? Where does it come from? And is it truly confined to the brain, or does it extend beyond us in ways that we don't fully understand? So the prize motivates scientists worldwide to pursue these questions with rigor, courage, and creativity, recognizing exceptional work and energizing the field. It invites researchers to question assumptions, develop testable frameworks, and broaden what science is willing to examine. Each year's topic reflects both Linda's vision and ION's own strategic priorities, and together they trace a thoughtful evolution in the questions we believe are most essential to advancing the science of consciousness. In the first year, we posed a direct and foundational question: is consciousness more than an emergent property of the brain? This topic was chosen because it addresses a long-held view in science that consciousness arises solely from brain processes. If that view falls short, then our scientific models will need to expand to match that evidence. So year one focused on developing practical, falsifiable, scientifically testable theories that could help resolve this question. In the second year of the prize, we expanded from experiments to the broader conceptual landscape. We invited researchers to produce a comprehensive, critical, and accessible review of theories of non-local consciousness. Theories proposing that consciousness may not be limited by the brain, nor by space, time, or the classical senses. And this topic was chosen because advancing a scientific field requires conceptual clarity. We needed a map. What theories exist? What evidence supports them? How do they compare with each other? And what are the most promising empirical opportunities? And so year two helped provide that map for both researchers and the general public. This year, we moved the conversation into a rapidly emerging frontier: conscious artificial intelligence. With AI evolving at an extraordinary pace, the question of whether an artificial system could ever be conscious is no longer theoretical, it is urgent. And what makes this year's prize unique is that it goes beyond traditional computational models. We asked applicants to explore frameworks grounded in non-local and non-computable principles of consciousness, and to propose ways to test whether AI might genuinely exhibit self-awareness, moral agency, or subjective experience. This topic connects directly with ION's strategic vision for the coming decades: understanding consciousness across biological and non-biological systems, developing testable consciousness-based models, and exploring how emerging technologies intersect with the nature of awareness itself. So across all 3 years, you see a clear and intentional arc. Year one asked, what is consciousness fundamentally? Year two asked, what theories best explain consciousness beyond the brain? Year two asked that. And year three asked, how do these insights guide the future, especially in AI? So together, these prizes embodies Linda's profound vision and advance ION's mission to explore the science of interconnection. I invite you to go to our website, noetic.org/prize, to learn about the previous year's winners and learn about the topics, and just offering deep, deep gratitude to Linda and all those involved in making this incredible prize and event possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Helene, for that beautiful overview of the prize and the work that IONS is doing. And now I am really delighted to welcome to the virtual stage ION's Executive Chair of the Board, Claudia Wells. So Claudia, passing it to you.
Thank you, Andrea. Can you hear me okay? Great. Okay. Hello and welcome, everyone. Helene, thank you for that beautiful intro. I am going to begin by honoring, on behalf of the IONS board and staff, the extraordinary and visionary generosity of IONS board member Linda G. O'Brien in establishing this annual prize. IONS is about transcending boundaries, and Linda, our gratitude for you truly knows no bounds. Let me also begin by acknowledging a question that many may be holding today. It's a fair one and a caring one. Why is IONS getting involved in AI? Helene talked about it. I'm going to add a little bit more context, including that we began this inquiry a few years ago, and then more formally last year during our 50th anniversary program, when we considered new potential directions, including AI, for inclusion in a new long-term strategic plan. This year, we completed that plan, and it is strongly aligned with the IONS legacy of bringing a noetic perspective into the heart of science, culture, and wherever what it means to be human is being debated, so we can help inspire more complete narratives about reality and human potential. Edgar Mitchell founded IONS because he cared about the fate of civilization, and AI has brought civilization to an inflection point. Artificial intelligence is computation, not cognition, yet it's already shaping what it means to be human and advancing faster than our understanding of human consciousness, and certainly faster than our collective capacity to grasp the potential of an expanded view of consciousness as a fundamental field of awareness in which all being arises. When our technology outruns our understanding and the application of our wisdom, we enter dangerous territory. This is territory we already know all too well, but AI brings us deeper into it, introducing new and profound existential risk. And that's why we made this year's Linda G. O'Brien Prize on Conscious AI to call urgent attention to a noetic approach to artificial intelligence and to bring to bear an emerging science of consciousness and a noetic imagination while the window of influence may still be open. This year's prize is a natural expression of our founder, Apollo 14 astronaut Edgar Mitchell's legacy. His return from the moon in 1971 gave him a life-changing direct experience of a conscious, interconnected universe with unconditional love and wholeness as organizing principles. His revelation, resonant with wisdom traditions across time, birthed IONS and also the entire field of noetic sciences to bring science into dialogue with experiences of expanded human perception. And this has urgent relevance for AI because AI does not have direct experience and algorithms cannot teach reverence. For over 50 years, IONS has worked at the frontier, investigating phenomena that mainstream science won't, or that remain poorly understood or underexplored. These phenomena suggest that consciousness is not derivative, not reducible, not computational, but fundamental to the nature of reality with paradigm-shifting implications. Because all our powerful technologies are mirrors shaped by our consciousness. Will the AI mirror reflect the higher spectrum qualities of love, compassion, and coherence? Or will we only see our ambition reflected back? That difference determines whether AI becomes an evolutionary breakthrough or breakdown. And for me, this brings sharper focus to a warning from Edgar when he said that Spaceship Earth cannot afford a mutinous crew. Today, we're realizing that, much like on Star Trek, our crewmates are both man and machine, human and non-human intelligence. What is our responsibility now as co-creators in this emergence? And how might we reach AI with unconditional love and wholeness as prime directives? If we succeed, AI may even help amplify those principles in a world desperately in need of remembering them. There are even bigger questions for the future of AI. If consciousness is truly fundamental in the universe, because then nothing, not even AI, exists outside of it. How might a conscious universe express itself in new modes of intelligence? IONS is holding all these questions with scientific humility, curiosity, and rigor. Engaging them carries risk, but IONS is no stranger to risk or controversy. We know that the greater risk is in stepping aside when humanity decides not only what we can do, but who we will become by doing it. Humanity and AI may need to evolve together or not at all. And ultimately, the urgent question is not whether AI will awaken, but whether humanity will. And that's a question built for IONS. I'd like to invite our president, Thomas Brophy, to offer additional context. And I thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Claudia. Well, your remarks are very profound and perfect segue to mine as well. And thank you, Linda G. O'Brien, for making all of this possible. And thank you, everybody who's joined us today. It's great to see all over the world with us today. So the great mathematician Alan Turing wrote his original paper on the Turing test in 1950. In that paper, Turing set out 9 categories of criteria for a test for how a human questioner could assess which of 2 competing contestants, one human, one machine, thinks like a human. Turing's last category, which I think is the most interesting one, but which has been largely ignored, was around extrasensory perception. What Turing said about this way back in 1950 is very interesting context to our research today at IONS. So quoting from Turing's paper and paraphrasing only slightly, Turing wrote, "Telepathy, clairvoyance, precognition, and psychokinesis. These disturbing phenomena seem to deny all our usual scientific ideas. How we should like to discredit them. Unfortunately, the statistical evidence, at least for telepathy, is overwhelming. It is very difficult to rearrange one's ideas about science so as to fit these new facts in." Still quoting from Turing. Difficult because once one has accepted these new ideas, the reality of psi and ESP, many of our cherished notions about reality, such as the idea that our bodies move simply according to the known laws of physics, would have to go. This argument against accepting the reality of psi and ESP is, to my mind, quite a strong one. End quote from Turing. But then Turing continues, a little bit more quote from Turing. "One can say in reply that many scientific theories can remain workable in practice in spite of clashing with the existence of psi and ESP. And one fears that thinking in the Turing test sense, thinking is just the kind of phenomenon where ESP may be especially relevant." Okay, now end quote of Turing. And in his paper, he gives an example. If the human questioner is asking the machine and human contestants in the Turing test, what suit of cards am I holding? Turing says in this example, the human might exceed chance through ESP, and the machine might not, and that would mess up the Turing test. And interestingly, Turing goes on in that paper, and he reasoned even further, that if the machines used a random number generator in the thinking process, the human interrogator's mind might affect the RNG through psychokinesis, further confounding the Turing test. So Turing concludes this 9th criterion that the test should be conducted in a telepathy-proof room to avoid any such problems. In 1980s, philosopher John Searle, perhaps presciently to the way large language models work today, he predicted that machines could get very good at connecting symbols together in such a way as to be good enough to pass a Turing test. But Searle said they would not be actually thinking because they don't have understanding, even though they can connect the symbols together well enough to pass the Turing test. Recently, in the 2020s, Physics Nobel laureate, our friend Sir Roger Penrose, says that large language models based on classical computing, in his view, cannot be conscious because consciousness, especially meaning and understanding, in Penrose's view, need to connect beyond the physical domain into the Platonic domain, where fundamental meaning resides, ontologically, according to Penrose. So the very basics of this question of machine consciousness are still very hotly debated. In the arts and literature, back in 1818, a Gothic novelist named Mary Shelley wrote a story about a scientist who assembles the physical anatomical parts of dead human beings back together again, and somehow the creature becomes alive and conscious. It is needless to say that things did not work out so good then for either the scientist, who was named Dr. Victor Frankenstein, nor for the creature, who we now call Frankenstein's monster in Mary Shelley's novel. We are living in a time now when what used to be mere scientific speculation or artistic fantasy is actually happening. And we may only have a short window of time as humanity to be able to tweak the foundations on which the future relationship between this emerging non-human general intelligence of AI and our human consciousness will develop. So the time is now. The fact that we don't have general consensus on even basic questions like fundamentally, ontologically, what is consciousness? What is understanding? What is compassion? That makes it even more urgent for us to engage with these questions. And that is why we selected this as the topic for this year's Linda G. O'Brien Noetic Sciences Research Prize. And we think our finalists, our essay finalists who are with us today, did an excellent job of helping us move this forward. Okay, and next we have our the leader of our prize judging panel, Dr. Arno Delorme.
Thank you, Thomas. Welcome, everyone. Can you hear me? 1, 2. Yes, great. Okay. And so I'm Arno Delorme. I'm a researcher at IONS, and I'm going to discuss a little bit the detail of this Euro Prize. So we're moving to the concrete part right now. And so what were participants asked to do? So they were asked precisely first give how they would design an AI that shows self-awareness, emotions, values, and agency, and how this fits into the big philosophical picture. So that's one of the criteria. And then they also were asked to include non-local principle, in the sense that some consciousness needs to emerge from that system that goes beyond space and time, and also include non-computational principle, how their theory they're proposing aren't strictly computable. So we don't want to just create a consciousness in a silicon chip. It needs to have qualia, it needs to have a sense of being. And most importantly, we also asked them to include some assessment protocols. So practical way to determine whether that AI is conscious or not. And so that's what we asked them to do. And then we had 6 judging criteria, which are similar to what we asked them to do, but slightly different. So I'm going to repeat myself a little bit, but our 6 judging criteria were innovation. So we want new ideas on how to build conscious AI. Then news or non-local and non-computable ideas. So, but also grounded in research in physics, neuroscience, and consciousness studies. And then most importantly, scientific rigor. So clear reasoning to support their ideas with citation, testability, experiment to test this. And we wanted everything to be also very clear, explainable to 8th grader. And finally, ethics. So every submission had to think seriously about the societal impact of conscious AI. So we definitely don't want an AI that's going to take over the world. We want AI that can live in harmony with human. But at the same time, and based on our own history, we don't want an AI that just repeat all the human mistakes, especially if it has superhuman abilities. So that wouldn't be good. So they had to reflect on that question. And that's actually also, the question of today. We're going to ask each of the participants how we can live in harmony with AI. So what was the process? Well, first, we put out the call, and there were 2 phases. So phase number 1 it was just a shorter submission. And so we had 56 international submission. And then out of these, IONS scientists selected 8 finalists, and these were given about 3 months to develop their full proposal. And once the submission arrived, a little bit more than a month ago, so the real judging began. And then, so we had each judge, I'm going to tell you who the judges were, evaluate each proposal independently, looking at all the criteria I mentioned. So the judges were, so first we had IONS scientists, so myself, Elane, and then Dean Radin and Garrett Yount. And then we had Ron Klein, a longtime entrepreneur and IONS enthusiast. We had Prashant Kancherla from Amazon AI. We had Shilpa Shetty, who is a director at Google DeepMind. And we had Julia Mossbridge, a longtime consciousness researcher and IONS fellow. We had Nimpun Mehta of Service Space, which is a volunteer-run nonprofit social organization. And finally, we had Jonathan Schooler, a distinguished professor at UC Santa Barbara. So as I mentioned, all the judges, they read every proposal. We compared notes and deliberated together. And then the final decision was made by consensus. And then we passed it on to the board of IONS for validation. So the board of IONS here represented by Thomas and Claudia. And then awarded the prize. And remember, there's not a first place. So all the winners are first place. And also, as you'll see, all the winners have a different approach on the problem. So they're very complementary. And before we announce the winner, we'll watch a short video about the award featuring Linda G. O'Brien.
I think everyone has their own reason to join a particular group of people. And for me, it was the scientific exploration of the mind. Our scientists need support to make sure we uncover what we can in this generation and generations to come. So I thought this was a good way to keep scientific exploration on their toes, because I know scientists are not the wealthiest people in the world, but to me, they're the explorers of our generation. So to know that this is an institution that has a group of scientists that are working in our best interests to know more about the universe, about us, about how we work in this universe. I want to support their scientific endeavors, and I encourage you to do the same.
So now we're going to move on to the first winning team, and I think we should have a slide for them. Here we go. Here we go. First winning team, so represented by Chris Percy, and then as leader of his team here. So Chris, you have the floor. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, hi everyone. Let me start by saying a big thank you to IONS for running this important competition. And the reflection I have at the start is, if the history of technology teaches us anything, it's that ideas move fast from being science fiction to being yesterday's news, and from being too crazy to take seriously to it's too late to do anything serious about it. And AI is fast on this trajectory. AI passing any credible, albeit minimal, Turing test was implausible as recent as 5 years ago. And it was wonderful to hear this description of a telepathy-proof Turing test room back in Turing's original conception. I don't think the Turing tests that were done recently checked for that particular condition. But today, when researchers did train bots to specifically pass as human, they fooled people over half the time in blind experiments. The future is coming at us fast. Nowadays, a growing number of people see glimpses of personality, of personhood, and perhaps even consciousness in their interactions with large language models. Others dismiss this as anthropomorphizing machines and just reacting to this simulacrum of language. Code reduces to a series of matrix multiplications and nonlinear operations. On the other hand, consciousness seems to emerge somehow from the seemingly simple electrochemical behavior compounded into complex interactions in our brains. So it's very hard to be certain in anything in this space. It is reasonable to look to science and research to guide our thinking on this topic. Unfortunately, our team's submission to this competition starts from a place of frustration. The majority of existing theories of consciousness barely provide explicit rules for whether consciousness is present in a system, let alone anything about the type of experiences they might have. At the same time, we need empirical theories with sound conceptual foundations. We want to answer these questions that are going to become more pressing in the coming years. Otherwise, we're just left with vibes. And one person's intuition is another's reductio ad absurdum. A few ambitious theories are trying to do more. We welcome that. We need more of it. We need other theories to raise their game. It's striking how some of the most confident, well-funded theories don't seem to have research programs that acknowledge and work towards the full extent of the gaps. Our team take this issue seriously. So let me bring up a few slides to give you a flavor of our work for this competition. So with any luck, you've now got that on the screen. So you can see our team on the slides. And in our view, at least, it's a great example of the interdisciplinary skill set we think is necessary to make progress on this topic. We've got a mix of expertise in neuroscience and neurosurgery, in data science, the technical side of AI, in analytical philosophy, and also in the diverse phenomenology of human experience. And to get crisper on this issue we're talking about, we designed a framework with 7 specific aspects that we need theories to answer. We call this the actor framework, based on the insights about AIs as moral actors that are ultimately necessary if humanity is to interact well with these ever more sophisticated artificial systems, operating independently, pursuing long-term goals over an extended period of time. Let me give a couple of examples of what we think theories need to tell us that they're maybe not doing so well today. It's not enough to know that consciousness might be in a system somehow or somewhere. Under panpsychist views, there's consciousness in any physical system. Instead, we need to know where these conscious entities start and where they finish, what shapes their persistence over time. We need to know what drives the content of their experience, particularly any joy or suffering they might be capable of experiencing, the valence of their experiences. So let's think about a computer for a moment. The appropriate ethical actions differ widely if consciousness resides at the level of individual logic gates, or perhaps subroutines, or programs, or maybe it's the central processing unit as a physical object. Likewise, they differ widely if valence is driven by error minimization, or perhaps processing, speed, consistency, or self-perpetuation, or fulfillment of some arbitrary kind of human-assigned goal in that system. We then tested 21 diverse field theories against this actor framework, including some leading quantum field theories and some leading electromagnetic field theories. Let me say a moment on why we chose field theories of consciousness to do this. They receive little attention today compared to connectionist paradigms, in part because their empirical predictions are harder to test in humans than those based purely on synaptic connections between neurons. With fewer computational models and fewer lab experiments, there are fewer data points to drive high-quality theories. Nonetheless, the ease of scientific testing is a poor guide to truth, and we should be wary of path dependencies. These field theories often resonate well with a noetic perspective on consciousness. They relate consciousness to fundamental physical phenomena. Fields naturally operate in an extended way across space, providing a potential physical correlate to the non-local spaciousness that can feel part of our experiential backdrop. These theories also have powerful toolkits for resolving long-standing mysteries around, for instance, the phenomenal binding that drives complex experience, the boundaries between conscious moments, as well as evolutionary motivation, and our compelling but very partial and very limited sense of human agency. More on all that in the paper. So it turns out that even the most mature field theories we tried to find as many as we could, basically, that met a series of criteria. Across the 21 that we did find, even the most mature leave a lot of questions unanswered. But they do provide an impressive scaffold to build on. And we hope that our work helps direct attention to fleshing out those theories, directed to the questions we need to answer to interact with artificial minds, and provides examples of more complete, more mechanistic explanations that might inspire others. So in the paper, we provide a deep dive into 3 of the most prominent theories, the most complete theories in this space, the ones at the top of the list on the slide. And we talk about the specific indicators of consciousness that they specify, how you can test for those indicators in different artificial systems, and the kinds of experiments that would help refine the theories themselves. Now, all of this work for us falls under the theory of the co-sentience initiative. Let me close by describing the convictions that that drive this initiative. So our first conviction is that people's intuitions, their opinions, you on this call, everyone involved in this process, your opinions about consciousness matter. We're not going to have the perfect consciousometer in the next 1, 2, 5, maybe even 10 years. We're not going to know for certain. We will hopefully get more and more confident, but we won't know for certain. So our opinions and our intuitions matter. But our opinions are not fixed. Mine are not fixed. I hope yours are not either. We don't know much today, maybe, about how our intuitions change about consciousness, but we have one of our research projects is on that topic. What we do believe is that our intuitions can be much better informed by humanity's existing knowledge, even without requiring new scientific breakthroughs. Our second conviction is that we should be holding the theories that do exist today to higher standards. And given how immature the whole field of consciousness research is today, we should not assume that today's front-runner technologies and theories are also tomorrow's. And this piece of work for IONS fits into this strand of the work. Third, we do believe that foundational progress about consciousness is possible, both in empirically informed theory, but also the empirical evidence base itself. It will take time and budget, but really amazing progress has happened already and has potential to be accelerated, perhaps through the very technologies that prompt the work of today's competition. Consider how we've gone from 300 to 400 neurons mapped in a nematode worm, one of the sort of simplest biological systems that manifests quite complex behaviors. We've mapped those 300 or 400 neurons in the 1980s. A few years ago, we mapped 200,000 cells in a cubic millimeter of a mouse visual cortex. Now, a cubic millimeter may not sound like very much, but that's 500 million connections of detailed functional mapping. We've made several orders of magnitude of progress since the 80s and 90s, 2, 3, 4 orders of magnitude, depending how you measure it. If our technology keeps progressing, give it another 2, 3, 4 orders of magnitude, put a bit of Moore's law progress on this, and actually we can be very ambitious about our ability to refine and test theories of consciousness. We will move beyond principles-based approaches, general ideas such as global workspace or recurrent processing. We will move beyond these general principles to really much more precise statements. Finally, what's all of this for? Well, a deeper understanding of consciousness in humans can in turn provide new insights into tools, therapies, worldviews, and ways of living that will support human flourishing. Consciousness in artificial systems, meanwhile, is a neglected part of this question of AI safety, the possible risks that ultra-powerful AI bring towards humanity as a whole. Now, there's lots more to say about all of those convictions and some of the projects they inspire. Do feel free to get in touch if you'd like to discuss any of that further. In particular, we have a website, cfdebate.com, with a lovely little quiz that tests your intuitions around computational functionalism, which is really one of the key scissor statements in this world of artificial minds. And there's one route, that perhaps the pathway being explored by this competition today, which goes down a route away from computational functionalism that really looks for something physical, something deeply embedded in the universe, in the reality of systems, that is at the heart of the ability to feel and the ability to experience. But there's another very prominent view in philosophy today, perhaps even the mainstream view, which is that it emerges as a process out of computations and algorithms. And the truth is today, we do not know which of these is right. No one should be 100% certain in their convictions. What that website does and what the quiz and the survey enables people to do is to probe their intuitions on that topic. Even if you have strong feelings in one particular direction, I encourage you to have a go at the quiz. You might be surprised that some of your intuitions nudge you in the opposite direction. And those are exactly the kind of intuitions that are worth exploring as part of a personal and collective journey towards figuring out kind of what we really think about this topic. Thank you for listening. Let me stop there.
Thank you so much, Chris. And now we're going to move to the second co-first place team with, we have William Marshall, and then I see we also have Giulio Tononi on the call from Brock University, Canada, and University of Wisconsin-Madison. So take it away, William.
Okay, hello. Let me just get my slides shared here. Okay, so hopefully you can see these slides now. All right, hello everyone. My name is William Marshall. I'm a professor in mathematics and statistics from Brock University in Canada. And today I'm going to walk you through our proposal for evaluating artificial consciousness through integrated information theory. Before I get started, I'd like to acknowledge my collaborators on this work, Giulio Tononi, who is here on the call, Larissa Albantakis, and Graham Finley, all out of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I'd also provide you this wiki website for our work, so everything I discuss today about machine consciousness or about IIT more generally, you can find there if you'd like to see more. I'd also like to thank IONS for its work putting all the work organizing this prize, and for the very timely support of research into artificial consciousness. You heard in the introductions how kind of recent advances in AI are highlighting how important this topic is. Okay, so to kind of frame what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to borrow from a field where machine consciousness has always been heavily supported, and that is science fiction. So why do we study consciousness? The screenshot I'm showing here, this is from a Star Trek episode, as Claudia mentioned earlier. This is from 1989, and this episode is called The Measure of a Man. And the premise of the episode is the character in the yellow in the middle, Data, is an android, and the character on the right in the blue is a scientist. And this scientist would like to take Data apart, deconstruct him, and learn how he is made, so that he can make more androids that can do more work for different starships. And the premise of the episode is, can Data object to the procedure? Does he have the right to object to it? And as they debate this issue, a key aspect of the argument comes, well, is Data conscious? Because if Data is conscious, then he should have the right to object to this potentially dangerous procedure in the same way you or I would have the right to object to some medical procedure. However, if Data is not conscious, perhaps the potential value and human flourishing that could come from the knowledge takes precedence. And one of the other things I want to highlight from this is when the writers made this episode, throughout, the scientist in blue is kind of both written and acted like a villain or as the antagonist of the show, because it's expected that the audience is going to side with Data. And I want to kind of press on, well, why are they so sure the audience is going to side with Data? And what I think the reason is it's because in previous episodes, we have seen Data act like a human, to behave intelligently, to perform complex functions. And it's very natural for us as humans to associate intelligence and consciousness. We as humans are conscious and we can behave intelligently and perform complex functions, or at least have the capacity to do so most of the time. And so because we are both conscious and intelligent, it's very intuitive to think that these two things go together, as kind of shown in this diagram here. And this position is kind of most closely aligned with something that Chris said of computational functionalism, the perspective that performing the right kind of function, the right kind of complex behavior, is all that is needed for consciousness. And so if you take that path, if you walk down kind of the computational functionalist path, then data is going to be conscious because he performs intelligent behaviors and complex functions, often better than the humans in the show. However, this position or this intuition is just that, it's intuition. It's not that we have proof of machine consciousness or of dog or insect consciousness. And given the kind of the weight of the ethical considerations, kind of the balance of AI rights versus human flourishing, we really ought to have a rigorous scientific approach to teasing apart this idea. And that's where we enter into integrated information theory. This is the perspective that we are working from. And integrated information theory, or IIT, is what we call a consciousness first approach to the problem, meaning that IIT starts from that consciousness exists, that I am consciousness. That is the foundational part of IIT, as opposed to starting from the brain or starting from complex functions or intelligent behaviors. It puts consciousness first. And that aligns it very well with kind of the noetic quality, a fundamental knowing of our own consciousness. And one way to describe the IIT approach is to say, we start from consciousness and the properties it has, and we want to explain those properties from the physical world. And so if the first property is that consciousness exists, then we need to have some kind of corresponding notion of physical existence. And in IIT, we take what we call an operational definition of physical existence, meaning what is out there in the physical world, we only know through consciousness, and we find it by performing experiments, by manipulating and observing the outcomes. And this boils down to, well, what exists is what can be caused and what can have an effect. It has causal power. That's the essence of physical existence for IIT. And this provides another nice link to the Noetic Sciences and the scope of the prize, in that there is no fundamental space-time that underlies us. All there is causes and effects. And so things like quantum effects or things like non-locality, if those can be revealed through experiments, through manipulation and observation, then they are a potential answer to the question of explaining consciousness. So in kind of some of the things you heard before, we're not constraining ourselves to the brain, but actually being very open to what the possible answers could be. Okay, so I don't have enough time to go through IIT in gory detail, but the fundamental property is that consciousness exists, and then we go through and we articulate other essential properties of every conscious experience. And then those essential properties are then translated into corresponding physical properties, meaning properties of cause-effect power. And then we define a mathematical framework that we can use to assess these physical properties to see, for a given physical system, does it exhibit properties that align with the essential properties of consciousness. And through this process, we get to our explanatory identity. That is, IIT takes phenomenology first, takes consciousness first. It unveils its essential properties, and it attempts to explain them through the physical, meaning causal properties of a physical system. And we have here this kind of diagram of purple diamond kind of shape. This is a representation of what we call a cause-effect structure, which is all of the causal properties of the system. And so that kind of is just like a stand-in for our explanation of consciousness, a simple visual depiction of it. Okay, so that's the IIT approach. And so how do we use it to study machine consciousness? Well, we start by finding the essential properties of experience. We account for them in physical terms. And once we've built the framework, we've built the theory, then now we can start from the physical and ask, right? This is where standard neuroscience goes. Here's a physical thing. Is it conscious? If it is, in what way is it conscious? And being able to ask those questions, we can now move on to a validation step. Validation takes a few different forms. One is the theory should be able to explain kind of empirical facts about consciousness from neuroscience, but also it should make testable predictions about human consciousness, specifically human consciousness, the one place that we are certain that consciousness exists. We iterate through this validation procedure over and over again, and we build our confidence in the theory. And only once we've kind of established that we are confident in the theory do we extrapolate to the hard problems. Maybe that's infants or animals or machines in this case. The validation aspect of IIT is an ongoing scientific endeavor, but the theory is mature enough that we can already ask the question, according to IIT, does intelligence imply consciousness? Meaning, if we have two entities, a human and a machine, both of which perform the same functions and the same complex intelligent behaviors, should we assume that the machine has the same conscious experience as the human? We've done some preliminary work on this. To do so, we start by building a simple target system. We study its causal powers. We then build a computer that we can use to simulate the target system perfectly. These two things can perform the exact same functions. It has all of the kind of traditional components of a computer. It's got a multiplexer, it's got data registers, a program, it's got a clock. And when we study the causal powers of this computer, we see that in fact, the two causal structures are not the same, meaning that despite their kind of similar behaviors or identical behaviors, they do not have identical causal structures, and thus, according to IIT, they do not have identical experiences. And this one you're seeing here is a very simple example, but in the paper, we go on to extrapolate to arbitrarily complex behaviors. So that means that according to IIT, intelligence does not imply consciousness, or complex functions do not guarantee complex phenomenology. In kind of the mantra in IIT is the difference between being and doing. Being is being conscious, doing are the actions you can perform. Okay, and so that's kind of where we're at, but then what comes next? We have a couple branches here. One is to say we need to work on more validation of IIT in healthy adult humans. So we're going to keep developing computational and statistical tools needed to support empirical research. And then we'd also like to explore alternative substrates for machine consciousness. We have our example of kind of a traditional computer, but we would like to explore, for example, neuromorphic computers that mimic brain structure, or quantum computers to see how the results change as we change the substrate. All right, that's where I'm going to stop. Thanks for listening. And again, here's the link if you want to look deeper into the work. Thank you.
Thank you, William. And now we're going to move on to the next finalist, co-first place, was Sanjay Guo of the nonprofit FinTech, FinQ Tech Inc. in College Park in Maryland. So take it away. Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Anna. And while I'm pulling my slides, I would like to say that it is such a great honor for me to receive the Linda O'Brien Award this year. And also to myself, it's more like a chance, an opportunity that I can put some concept that I have into words, right? And I can build a team. And my day job is trying to understand how quantum computing works and how quantum computing can create values to humanity. And in the meantime, I'm interested in consciousness, and I want to try to understand how these two things link together. I have some ideas, but ions give me a reason to put this into text, right? So without further ado, let's move into my topic today. So first of all, this reward is about creating a conscious AI, and I would like to start to thinking about it, like what that even mean. Like for our audience, this I understand this is our third presentation today. You might be tired, so let's make some brain teasers about thinking about like your favorite AI tool here, for example, like ChatGPT. And do you believe that this thing have a consciousness at all? And most likely you would not believe that because otherwise you won't be here and you are satisfied. We already built a conscious AI. But the deeper question is that why not, right? Why do you not believe in that? Is that just because are some human arrogancies that believe that it's just functional thing, right? To me, this question seems to be a hard question. So my way to do that is trying to make it simpler, right? And again, just a like a quick thing for the third presentation. Here I will list some systems, and if you feel that any of these systems are consciousness, if you can make some reactions with a reaction button, that would be great. First of all, it's just a for me, it's just the simplest thing I can imagine. It's like a rock, or it's like something that's very stationary, very predictable, and it doesn't move. And I know almost everything about it. At least seems like so. If you believe this a rock have consciousness, please, just make some reaction. And the third one and second one I want to mention is like a coin that you are flipping, right? You flip a coin and you close it. You don't know what it is, you don't know the answer, and you can make a prediction saying that, okay, it's a 50-50 chance. You get a head or you get a tail. However, you have to understand also that this flipped coin is not decided by itself, right? It's like, okay, it's predefined. It's if we know everything about, for example, like how hard you flip the coin, what's the air resistance there, like what's the surface bounce, how it will bounce on the surface, you might be able to predict the result of this coin. A third one is kind of like a coin, but you don't know. Like no matter how hard you are trying to understand the initial conditions, the environment it is, no matter how hard you are doing that, you can only use a prediction. You can only say that, okay, there is a probability that is like 50% of chances ahead. Like even if you know everything about this coin. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that if you want me to believe that a system somehow possess consciousness, there must be some room for my interpretations saying that there is a chance that this system could choose its own state, no matter how hard we probe it, no matter how hard I'm trying to understand it, no matter how hard I'm trying to use a theory to predict the result of it, there's still a chance. There's still a possibility that this system seems to be on its own. Well, luckily, we do have this perfect coin in our nature, and well, not allowed by Newtonian mechanics, but allowed by quantum mechanics. There are two things I would like to mention. I don't have the time to get into too much details, but here I'm listing some links for a basic explanation of both. Number one is Bell test or Bell theorem. Basically, what it's saying is a quantum system doesn't have hidden variables. That okay, even this hidden variable doesn't exist to predefine its result that you are going to observe. Number two is by Convey and Cauchy, free will theorem. Basically, what it's saying is that if we believe, well, of course, under some assumptions of axioms, that sounds very plausible. If we believe that a human could possess some sort of free will, so basically it means that our action later will not be a function of our history or environment, or at least not only a function of the history of the environment. So does some element particles and like protons, electrons. And when we are observing these particles, they kind of choose their state by themselves. In the meantime, we human beings are also trying to build a system that harness these sort of element particles. We call this, in a way, of qubits as a mathematical object of these element particles. There's various modalities we are trying today, and we call those devices in general as quantum computers. These computers are noisy. It's not as perfect as we imagine to be built, but however, it seems to be able to serve at least some purpose, as Conway and Cochin mentioned as free will theorem. And in the meantime, these quantum computers could do some certain type of computations better than our classical ones, and that's why people are trying so hard to build it. But here I'm trying to mention that it's not like almighty machine that you can do all your computation from them. So, well, for the scope of this award, it seems like our question seems to be solved, right? So the only thing something we can do is just somehow glue some sort of quantumness to our AI system, and we can call such a thing conscious. However, here we're trying to say is that yes, building a system and you call it conscious is an easy task. But to my opinion, we take it into a practical angle saying that, okay, if you claim that your conscious AI is better, you have to somehow outperform today's AI that you believe is not conscious, at least in some specific tasks. And that brings us to the question is saying that, okay, what are these tasks? Like, what are these tasks that our today's quantum computer can do better comparing to our classical systems? And unfortunately, there's only a handful of choices. But one of these choices is what we called quantum sampling. So sampling is basically means that just like you're throwing coin and you know in the future that, and you know that, okay, in the future it will be like 50-50, and you actually flip the coin and get your answer. And you flip it thousands, 10,000 of times, and you get a bit string of your result. And this process of flipping the coin is called sampling. And no matter how hard you are, but okay, what I'm trying to say here is that for like the easiest case scenario, like a coin, this seems to be an easy task, even for a classic computer to do. However, you can also imagine that your probability density distribution could be complex. Like in the term of there might be more than one coin, there might be those coins may be correlated somehow, and when this degree of freedom dimension getting larger and larger, you can also imagine that the distribution could getting more and more complicated. And this will be very hard for a classical computer to do, because the only thing it can do is just do a like a even distribution and skew that even distribution with your probability density functions. However, this could be a quantum easy task, and it seems to be a very short presentation to understand why this is quantum easy. But here I have like a one sentence hand wavy heuristics to help you understand. It's kind of just like the coin metaphor that I'm using earlier, is that it seems like this quantum computer have some freedom to choose its own state. And that's why sampling is very easy. It's just a measurement in the quantum language. Now, why this is related to why we think that quantum sampling is a task that's related and can be used in today's LLM system or AI. And here we find a niche angle of this task that almost every language model is using today is called word embedding. So word embedding is like a process that maps your word to some data. And this data is basically a vector in a semantic space. And here, for example, like a man may be mapped to 1, 7 in this map, and some other words may map to somewhere else. And notice that here the semantic space seems to have some meanings, but in reality, the semantic space doesn't really have that very specific meanings here. And what we are proposing here is that it doesn't seem to be a really good or very intuitive idea. It's more likely, at least what I'm thinking about how I process word. It feels like I'm not mapping a word to a specific meaning, but actually what I'm feeling is that I'm mapping a word to a distribution of meanings. That could be means a lot of things, but okay, there might be a mean value of this a lot of things, but as we can see, like some of the word have a bigger distributions, and some of the word may have very specific meanings. And that's what we're trying to say is that for a quantum version of word embedding, we can actually map this word onto a distribution. Or actually, every time I'm trying to draw a meaning of a word, we actually draw a sample from this distribution. So why this is good, right? Why we think that quantum word embedding is good? It seems like you are just adding. It seems like at the very first glance, we are just making things a little bit more complicated. It's why a distribution seems to be better than a point or than a vector. I think here are at least two reasons that we can think about it. Number one is that it seems to be more natural for us to comprehend some semantic relationship. At least two examples here. And for example, like hypernym basically means that one word have a broader meaning comparing to another. In word embedding, it's basically just 2 points, and you do some sort of rotations to make this relationship happens. However, this relationship is very hard. It's kind of unnatural for me, at least, to comprehend as a rotation in a semantic space. But here it seems to be more easier, right? It's for example here scarlet it have a narrower meaning comparing to the word red, and you just define a smaller space, define a smaller space in our semantic space for this word. Another one maybe is polymathy. Basically means that a word can mean two things or even more things. And for example, the word bank. And that's also easy for me to assign just two space in your semantic space for this word. The second reason is that not only you can interpret more meanings, but also you can change those meanings according to the context that you have. Like for example, here, if a bank is conditioned by the word river, you can assign, you can shrink the meanings that is close to a post office and making the meaning on the that close to the land a little bit bigger, or vice versa. If the bank is conditioned by the word of America, then you can do it in an opposite way. But more importantly, as I said before, I think the most important thing for me is that this representation of word meaning seems to be more like how I process word and how I assign meanings to when I heard one. So to close my presentation, I would like to thank our collaborators, Yidong, Jiaqi, and Anze. I would also like to thank the sponsors, including Ions. Here we also get some sponsorships from Amazon Bracket to make some preliminary experiments of our idea. And in the meantime, I would like to introduce our nonprofit, Thank You Tech Inc. So it's just like IONS. It's a nonprofit organization. Instead of working for Noetic Science, we focusing on quantum computing, and we would like more people. And no matter if you are quantum computing expert or not, there's always a place for you to learn more about it. And if you are interested to get involved in this particular work, feel free to send me an email, and there's my email. So I will just stop there, and thanks the organization.
Thank you, Sanjay. And so congratulations to all the winners. The jury also wanted to award a special mention to Tammy Scarlett and Marshall Lefferts for their proposal, Relational Intelligence and Harmonic Sovereignty, a framework for conscious AI emergence. And so their proposal, so they didn't get award money, but we wanted to give a special mention to them. And so their proposal is also going to be available on the website. And now we're going to move on to, there's no Q&A, but we prepared a question for everyone to answer. And that's more centered on, we heard a lot of technical talk about how conscious AI could work. But assuming we have a conscious AI, how can we be sure that it's going to live in harmony with consciousness? How they can exist co-compassionately together? So first, I'm going to ask Chris what he thinks about that.
Thank you. And so interesting to follow those presentations. I'm looking forward to reading the full essays later. I'll just say 10 seconds on one of the questions that came up a lot in the chat, which is around a definition of consciousness. In our particular paper, every theory we analysed might have its own definition. So we followed each theory's individual view. Otherwise, I would give a shout out to one of the comments in the chat around something is conscious if there is something that it feels like to be that thing. There is some experience, there is some awareness inside it. It could be very, very simple, could be totally non-human-like, but still some awareness. So at least that's sort of one response there. But I know, yes, this could. So the reason I answered that question is because it's a lot easier to answer than your question. Yeah, it's a big question. Let me share some quick reactions. It feels like it all deserves more attention. So, okay, first reaction is that we want to be in a world where the human minds and the non-human minds have got some relevant influence over each other. If they're irrelevant to each other, then there's no interaction to worry about. If only one is relevant, then it's hard to get an interaction going. And if one side has a dominating level of control over the other, then you end up with slavery or extinction risks, or being dependent on goodwill to avoid those outcomes. So we want to be in this world where there's some mutual relevance. And as soon as you've got some mutual relevance, some mutual influence, then maybe we're in a familiar sort of political situation, just with very different actors. Already today, you've got different people and groups. We affect each other as a society, and we have various imperfect but functional mechanisms for trading goods and services, for trading off rights and responsibilities, establishing rules, enforcement, and so on. Okay, but what kind of mutual influence could we imagine with non-human minds? Well, this is where it gets very difficult very quickly, I think, but we can think of purely transactional influences, and then there's an interesting set of influences around ethics and relationships. So what I am going to assume is that it is humans, who will build or lead to be generated these non-human minds, and that otherwise, where have they come from, I suppose. So in the short term, or what is called a slow takeoff scenario for AI's gaining capabilities, it's likely that we've got a period of time with transactional influence. We will want to use the AI's capabilities to answer our questions, contribute to science, solve problems. And I think that's true whether it goes down the current language model route or quantum computers or something entirely different. There'll likely be some capabilities we will benefit from. AI in turn might have a role for us in maintaining their infrastructure, supporting their capability growth, or maybe just generating interesting problems for them to solve. So that's the transactional side, but we can also think about individual minds that form attachments to each other across this human, non-human boundary. They might try to look after each other for their own sake, just as we do with friends and family and pets today. Or groups of minds on both sides might arrive at ethical positions in which they look after each other because it's the right thing to do, not because there's another reason for it. Now, in all of these cases, at this stage, it's very unclear what kind of needs or wants a non-human mind might have. Ultimately, we probably need them to tell us in some form. And we need that to go beyond the kind of role-playing that is really what we see in current generation language models. We need something that relates more to genuine preferences, and that might require a very different architecture. But what's fascinating is this current period in which artificial minds might be created by us. Can we shape their values and experiences? Can we set them up to compute with gradients of bliss rather than suffering? Maybe they might veer naturally into collaborations with us. And there are organizations, Softmax is one, there are organizations working on AI alignment in this direction. Maybe the last thing I'll say on this is that to start with, at least, these minds will largely know what we enable them to know. They will learn at first from humanity's knowledge base before drawing their own conclusions or doing their own research and maybe rejecting whatever it is we think we've learned. But during this period, they know what we know. And that means we collectively as part of this community, we're at this potentially very, very high leverage point for where we direct our current research. And I don't just mean AI research or alignment research. I mean the broader span, the humanities, the broader span of what human research focuses on. And given the power of path dependency, our ability to define the initial knowledge base that artificial minds are fueled with might be critical. So we should be smart, right? We should be strategic about where we choose to invest our limited research effort. The theories of ethics, of consciousness, of collaboration, where we put our energy. And I would argue for special attention to ideas like open individualism and valence realism, the kinds of ideas that we don't know if they're true, but if they are true, and research might help us build an evidence base around them, even if it remains uncertain. These are ideas that can ground compassionate collaboration without top-down control, either from us to non-human minds or from non-human minds back to us. I mean, all of this is uncertain because, as we sort of say in our paper, we don't have the theories yet and the science to drive our thinking. But whilst it might seem optimistic to aim for scientific progress on these foundational questions, to us it feels hubristic not to at least try. Like, this is the time. This is the time to give it a shot. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your answer. And now I'm going to direct the question to both William and Giulio. So assuming AI can be conscious, how can we ensure that we exist, in harmony with it, especially if it has superhuman capabilities?
Let me take it. I know this is Giulio. And I will begin by contesting your assumption. So I want to go back first to what Chris just said. It's important to state what we mean by consciousness. And, we should all mean experience, to have an experience, to hear anything, to see anything, to feel anything, to have a thought, an emotion, anything like that, what it is like to be. That is what consciousness is. And from that point of view, the question whether AI is or is not conscious is indeed, I think Claudia put it very, very well at the beginning, a critical and urgent one that we need an answer to, given how rapidly it's progressing in terms of intelligence. Now, the important thing to say here, from the point of view of integrated information theory, as you heard from Billy Marshall, is that consciousness is then being and not doing. Now, in us, doing typically goes together with being conscious, then we can behave intelligently. But as we argued, the two can be dissociated. And so in the future, the very near future, it really becomes critical to understand whether AI, who can do everything we do potentially much better, and very soon might be able to surpass us in most things that we usually admire in each other, whether they actually there or not, whether they may feel joy or pain, they may actually see things or only act as if they did, whether they can actually show agency only as if they had free will, or they actually do have the ability to choose. These are all critical ontological questions. And the only place where we know that consciousness is present is ourselves for now. So you need a theory that says what it takes to have consciousness and why. What are its essential properties? On the basis of that, which we can validate with experiments on ourselves, we can then make extrapolations, as Billy said. And one conclusion I want to bring up that follows from the theory very clearly, all the work we've done over the years, is that if what it takes to be conscious, as we can see in ourselves, is a very special kind of substrate to be conscious like we are, then AI, as long as they are implemented in standard computers, are absolutely not conscious at all. There is nothing it is like to be an AI, no matter how intelligent. That's a critical thing because it's the difference between treating AIs as tools, as objects, or treating them as subjects. And that question, we must get an answer as soon as possible and make an effort, which is why I think this initiative is so fundamental. There are also many other implications, but I will only mention one. Integrated information theory, I think, resonates very well with the spiritual and wisdom tradition that were mentioned in the context of ions, precisely because it puts the emphasis to what it is like to be and in the subjective aspects of being there. One of the important consequences of this approach, I think, is that, and hopefully we'll realize that soon enough, so far, intelligence has been vastly overrated. We usually judge things by how intelligent they are, including ourselves. And instead, I think we should move to a very different phase into which we understand that what matters the most, in fact, the only thing that ultimately matters, is being conscious, having experiences, no matter how intelligent you are. That's clearly true when you have spiritual experiences, transcendental experiences, or something, for instance, we have been trying to study experimentally, experiences of pure presence, in which there is no intelligence whatsoever. There is no thinking, there is no doing, there is no object, really, there is no ego for sure, and yet there is an intense sense of presence, a sense of existing. So I think we should realize that it is precisely consciousness, experiencing what matters and what distinguishes us from machine, what makes it special to be ourselves, not just ourselves, of course. And the intelligent aspect, while important, remains a tool. And especially if we can now outsource that aspect, intelligence, to machines, we should actually realize what it is that we really should keep for ourselves, which we only ourselves have. And that has been underestimated, I think, quite a lot in a world that is more and more geared towards doing rather than being.
Thank you, Giulio. And now I'm going to direct the same question to Sanjay. Yeah, assuming future AI can be conscious, how can we coexist with it?
Right. Thanks for the question. And actually, the first time I heard this question, it reminded me of a book. The book's name is The Selfish Gene. I'm assuming most of people have read that. So here's my thought, right? We are created by gene, and most things that we do is trying to make more copies of gene. It seems to be a very functional thing, right? It seems to be that we are coexisting with them. We cannot remove them from our body. And they are basically the fundamental codes that we are operating on. And I feel that it will be very similar to our future with AIs. And I would assume that nobody would argue that GN is more capable than us, or GN have more conscious than us. And in the future, maybe like, okay, those machines could be more capable than us, and those machines could be have more conscious than us. So what I feel is that we kind of need some sort of integration. We kind of need to think like our genes. We kind of need to feel like, I don't know, I think the brain computer interface seems to be a plausible way to going onto that route. Well, my research topic is in quantum technology and quantum computing, so I'm trying to be more biased on this and talk a little bit more about these thoughts. Is that yes, you have a BCI, you have this channel between human and machines. That's good, but is that enough, right? Is that do you only need a classical channel to make it happen, or do you need some sort of quantum channel as well? I'm not going to go into too much detail of what's the difference between that. If people are interested, let's talk about more. But this is like this is a very hypothetical question, right? It's like there's so much preliminary question as well. There, like for example, like are we quantum computers? I truly want to believe that, but seems like the evidence is very small, and yeah, and we don't have enough resource to do any sort of research in that topic as well. So I hope that helps, and I hope that is an interesting angle that from my perspective.
Thank you so much, and congratulations again to all the winners. We just have a few minutes left, so we'll have closing statement from all of the scientists involved here at IONS. I'll start. And so, yeah, AI is one of the biggest transformation in our society. We're living it right now, and it's very privileged, but also very scary. I like what Giulio said, where we can dissociate intelligence from the sense of being, and maybe build some AI. Some AI are purely computational, like ChatGPT, 0% consciousness, and some AI are conscious, but maybe they don't have as much intelligence, and so we can dissociate the two, and so we don't necessarily have to fear the super intelligent AI, but that also has agency, and could one day like decide that we're no longer needed. So I really like that view. And so, this way we can live with AI in harmony. And now I'm going to pass it to Elane.
Thank you so much, Arno. I just want to offer deep gratitude to Linda, to everyone involved here. Incredible congratulations to all the winners. And I'm just really grateful that we're just continuing to show up for the conversation, for bringing our hearts and minds to the table. This topic is obviously creating a lot of divisiveness and fear and anxiety and anger for a lot of people. And so how do we keep showing up with unconditional love, with openness, with curiosity and willingness to be with each other as we navigate these incredible transformative times. So thank you all. It's just been a pleasure to be here with you today. And I'm going to pass it to Claudia now for her closing statements.
Thank you, Helene, and thank you, everyone. And since time is short, I'm just going to say that I think the most important thing I learned today and through this prize generally is that IONS has some really brilliant, heartful, caring minds to help bring noetic values to the evolution of AI. I'm really grateful for that. And I was texting earlier with Linda O'Brien. She was unable to be live on the program today, obviously, but Linda was watching, and she asked me on her behalf to congratulate all our winners and thank all our entrants and everyone on the call today for being part of this important conversation. Linda and I were both inspired by the first president of IONS, Willis Harman, and so I'd like to close with a piece of his noetic advice because it's something we can all do to create leverage for a positive outcome for life, which is because of the interconnectedness of all minds, affirming a positive vision may be about the most sophisticated action any one of us can take. So thank you again for joining, and I think I'm passing it on now to Thomas.
Thank you, Claudia. And that message from Linda G. O'Brien, thank you. Thank you, all of our prize winners, for bravely venturing into the unknown that is this field of machine consciousness. We saw very different approaches and perspectives, but this sort of broad scope approach is what we are going to need to make progress into this area that is beyond the known. And thank you everyone who joined us in this webinar. It is inspiring to see so many people really engaged at a high level. All of us together approaching this issue that is very important to our future as a human community. The critical and urgent ontological question, as Claudia started us out with, and Giulio and the others noted in the final section, of how an understanding of consciousness can enable us to keep artificial general intelligence aligned with us. And everyone, please stay engaged with ION's events and activities as we go forward. I think Andrea has some final comments too.
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you, everyone. Maybe we can just give one final virtual round of applause to all of our winners. And again, deep gratitude to Linda G. O'Brien, the panel, everyone who made this possible to really move forward this field in a meaningful way. So I love seeing all of the emojis coming forward in the chat. So again, congratulations to the winners. Thank you all for being with us here today. I have just a couple of very quick announcements here. If you have enjoyed today's offering, we invite you to go to noetic.org/give to become a member, or if you're already a member, to make a special gift to help keep this mission moving. And before we wrap up, I'd love to also invite you all to join our next Noetic Global Gathering. These are IONS member gatherings. The next one's happening on December 5th with this theme. So we took our award theme and we're bringing it into discussion. So unlike a webinar, this is interactive. Participants will go into small breakout rooms where they can share their perspectives, explore questions together, and build meaningful relationships with fellow Noetic explorers. And I know there's a lot of you in the chat who have a lot of expertise in this area as well. So if you'd like to come join the conversation with small breakout groups, we invite you to become an IONS member. If you're already an IONS member, you'll find that invitation in your inbox starting on November 26th. So we warmly welcome you to join IONS or to learn more about our research at noetic.org/membership. So I think that's all for now. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you. Congratulations to the winners. And until next time, thanks everyone, and bye for now.